Hi, Resistance. And I'm sitting outside, so you might hear a little bit more noise than usual. My name is Francis. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I call myself a therapy coach. So I coach people to remove emotional blocks so that they can move forward in their lives, so that they can thrive in their lives and live the lives that they were meant to live. In this video, we're going to get right to it. The question I want to ask you is, do you trust yourself? Or do you find yourself second guessing at every turn? So I put this video together to explain a few things about why, we have a hard time trusting ourselves and making decisions in our lives. I talk about why there's no such thing as a good or bad decision or right or wrong ones. I'm also going to share with you a quick story about a coach that I saw and the life-changing reframe she gave me that helped me to reframe the decision-making process. And it helped me to make decisions a lot faster. But most importantly, I'll spend a good deal talking to you about why it's so hard for us to trust ourselves and what we can do to strengthen that bond with ourselves. Also, you're going to want to stay towards the end because I share with you a few phrases that you can use to help you move out of being in limbo so you can make more decisions that'll also help you to increase the trust within yourself. The thing that I hear from people is that I'll never be able to find a way to trust myself, or I'll never be able to find a way to trust others. That's simply not true. First of all, the world is never black and white. So we have to move away from all or nothing kinds of thinking, and our emotions aren't all or nothing, right? We're complex individuals. So trust is very possible. And the good news is it's learnable. Like, you can learn how to do this. I had a client of mine who not too long ago said, I'm doing something wrong. I question myself every second I get. You know what I said to her? I said, you're not doing anything wrong, because frankly, good and bad, wrong and right are all illusions of the mind. But despite this being the case, there's something deep down inside of us that validates this way of thinking and being. Usually it's because of experiences that happen to us, right? That has us thinking and feeling that way. So it's completely not your fault. However, it is your, responsibility to begin to make those changes so you can live the life that you want to live. And now that you know that it's not your fault, what are you going to do about it? We're way too hard on ourselves, and for good reason, because, we had people in our lives who sometimes to no fault of their own just didn't know how to give us the proper guidance, or didn't know how to hold space for us when we had those moments when we're second guessing, or didn't know how to help us develop certain parts of ourselves. And I honestly believe that people cannot give you what they don't have for themselves, or what they never give to themselves. So do you find yourself in the same boat as my client? And to be honest, I used to be that way, and I find myself sometimes getting stuck in limbo land and having a hard time making decisions. But I use these tips and tricks to help me move forward. It wasn't until I started traveling in 2016 that I had no other choice but to trust myself. There wasn't any sounding board because I was alone most of the time. Sometimes, 12 to 14 hour time differences in far away places. And I often had to make quick decisions in countries that I didn't understand the lay of the land. Other times I just had to have faith, right? That the decision that I made was going to be a decision that moved me forward. I know what you might be thinking. I can't trust myself, or I can't afford to make the wrong decisions. But really, that's just your ego talking. It isn't you. Not only is it your ego, but it's your caregivers, maybe other people in your life who convinced you that was the case, but it's not really you talking. So what we really need to do is replace those voices in our heads with our own voices. And the more you do that, the more, your life will begin to shift. Okay, so before I get into the video, I want to expand a little bit more on the story I shared with you earlier. Let's get a little bit deeper. So that same client that was, consumed with second guessing herself to the point that it literally caused her to be paralyzed in her thoughts and very much stagnant. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, meaning she wasn't able to move forward because she was constantly ruminating, right? Of like, what should I do? Is this the right decision? What if this doesn't work? What if I'm wrong? All of that. And that's natural things that come up for us when, especially if we're making really big decisions in our lives. So I coached her through the process of decision making, which in all honesty, wasn't really about decision making. What was revealed to her as we went through the whole process was a lack of self-worth. We have a hard time making decisions because we're scared and because we don't feel like we deserve whatever it is that we're making a decision about, or afraid of how it will look, whether people will judge us because of the decisions that we make or the decisions that we don't make. This was a major turning point for her because she finally realized that she was living a life by what other people thought. She was absorbing other people's stuff that got in the way of her trusting herself and making decisions for her life, And if you do that long enough, you drown out your intuition. So the question was, where was her standard? Where does she fit in all of this? So as you watch the video, I really want you to keep these questions in mind. What is truly behind the resistance that you're feeling? What is underneath you not making that decision and remaining in limbo? What's the resistance and uncertainty behind you not trusting yourself? All right, thanks for staying on this far. So in this video, again, I'm going to talk about a few crucial things that I believe will change your life. I'm going to shed some light on how to not get stuck in limbo and indecisive nowhere land. And if you do, how you can pull yourself out of it. And this is related to some life-changing reframe that I mentioned earlier that I received from a coach that I saw. When she told me this, it literally changed how I made decisions moving forward. And I remember thinking to myself, why didn't I ever see it this way? And then lastly, I'm going to walk you through why it's hard for you to trust yourself and what you can do about it. I want to jump right into the reframe that the coach gave me because it's super, super important. And it's so freaking simple that when she said it, I was floored. And I asked myself, why didn't I ever think about this in the first place? Here's the thing. We receive a lot of our ideas from social conditioning. Seriously, we do, right? It's so weaved into our thoughts and actions that we have a hard time delineating between what's ours, what's coming from our souls and our hearts and our minds versus what's coming from outside of ourselves. My coach said this: no decision is a bad decision. She said, decisions are just feedback. And so the quicker you decide, the quicker you receive the feedback that you need, and the quicker you can build momentum, the quicker you can move forward. So every time I find myself slipping back into indecisiveness land, I think about that, and it truly helps me to decide. So if you decide on something, so what if you're wrong? You can't be wrong because wrong doesn't exist. I know, it's wild, right? Wrong is just a judgment on your part that you've absorbed as a result of your own social conditioning. It's very powerful. And I really want you to just take a moment and sit with that thought. You make a decision and it doesn't go as planned because that's the way life is, right? Or it doesn't go the way that you thought it would. So what? And I say that with a lot of compassion, but there's always a solution to every situation. It might not be what we hope for. The solution might not be what we like, but you could always pivot at any given moment. This is to remind you that you have agency, you have control in a lot of these situations. Of course, there are going to be some decisions that you need to sit with a bit more, right? To process a bit deeper. Yet it's also important to be mindful, are you dragging your feet with a lot of resistance? If you are, then ask yourself why and be brave and honest with your answers. Do you feel that making a particular decision is going to be painful, risky? What are the feelings that coincide with making this decision? Do you wonder that it's not going to look right based on societal standards? Sometimes making the decision feels in alignment, but we're still afraid of what people think or how they will perceive us. Other times we believe if we decide on something, it'll waste time, money, or impact our relationships, which is valid because sometimes they actually do. But waiting in limbo is just not the best feeling, right? It turns into angst, lots of anxiety, frustration, disappointment, and even maybe regrets, right? Wishing that you made that decision a lot sooner. However, the beautiful thing about making decisions is that it grows your confidence, it expands your wisdom, and because you learn so much about yourself and others in the process that you find yourself in much deeper clarity. I said earlier that decisions are neither good or bad, wrong or right. And I gave you that simple reframe that my coach gave me. But the other caveat of that is understanding what's underneath your resistance. It's important to work through both sides of this process by removing the judgment and notion because it helps you to understand the resistance. If you've subscribed to my newsletter, you've heard me talk a lot about this already. If you haven't subscribed, then go ahead and subscribe in the description below. But I used to be you. For God's sakes, I'm a Libra. Indecisiveness ruled my life for so many years. And then I went on overseas. Again, I had to make decisions, often alone without a sounding board. And sometimes they had to be quick. And most of the time, I had no idea what was on the other side of that decision. And I had to trust people that I didn't know. But between what my coach said and living in uncertainty, I learned to trust myself because it starts there. What comes with making decisions is you inadvertently start to trust yourself. When you have a hard time trusting your external world, it has a lot to do with the relationship you have with yourself. As children, this was a little easy for us. All childhoods are unique, but we did what we wanted. We said how we felt. But somewhere along the line, someone stifled us in the process and we drifted away from our true knowing and it got replaced with external voices. First of all, we learn not to trust ourselves because of so many different elements, because of the social conditioning of our world that has us relying on external circumstances instead of our own gut intuitions. If we grew up in distrustful households, then it makes sense that as adults, that part of us still shows up. Maybe we had caregivers who made us feel small and fearful. You might have had caregivers who were also fearful and distrustful or lived in fearful households. They made you fear in your abilities to step into yourself, to sharpen your skill sets and talents. So you grew up relying on others to do the decision-making for you. Honestly, you don't trust yourself because you were taught not to. Whether someone thought you weren't good enough to do things on your own or denied your potential, or they were more concerned about what other people thought on the outside. You don't trust yourself because there's this feeling of not feeling good enough, low self-worth, that sort of thing, a poor self-image. You might not trust yourself because you haven't practiced enough ways to do so. Getting in tune with our intuition, which we all have the ability to do so, it's just because we've become separated from it. We must get quiet. We must turn off all the noise, and then we have to go within. And that's going to be hard for some of you, especially if you experience extreme forms of trauma. But remember, nothing is insurmountable. But you have to silence the noise so that you can hear yourself. Spend more time with yourself in meditation, daily walks, being in nature, or surrounding yourself with people who believe in you. If you have a hard time believing in yourself, one of the things I always recommend my clients to do is borrow someone else's belief in you. So you can use me because I believe in each and every one of you. So take my belief in you and use that as a stepping stone to begin the process. Every one of you is capable of reaching a level of trust within yourself so that you can confidently make decisions that propel you forward. And you can start small. The biggest thing is, in what micro ways can you start practicing making decisions, getting the feedback, then adjusting, and then moving forward? And in what micro ways can you get quiet so you can hear the little voice inside of you, just small ass baby steps. And if getting quiet feels overwhelming, my recommendation is do it for like 30 seconds. Don't jump in there trying to do like 10, 15 minutes. That's way too much. 30 seconds, once a week, add another couple of seconds or add another day, same time, small baby chunks. And for some of you, that little voice can sound a bit negative and unkind, especially when you start to get quiet. If that voice is taking over your own voice, your true voice, then say, I hear you, but I'm not listening to you anymore. And just for today, this is from the Reiki principles, if you're familiar with Reiki, just for today, I'm going to listen to me, because we all have spidey senses for when things, just don't feel right and when things do feel right. And not the right, wrong judgment thing, but in alignment. That is your intuition talking to you. So thank you for staying towards the end. What I want you to do is say the following. So these are the things I want you to write this down and get focused. So when you're in a situation of feeling like you don't trust yourself or it's hard for you to make decisions, I want you to begin to start saying a few phrases. And the reason this is so important is because you need to replace those old thoughts with new thoughts, because you can't use the same kind of thinking. I think it's Albert Einstein, but you can't use the same kind of thinking to solve new situations or to make new situations better for yourself. First one, everything starts with me because I am the source. The decisions that I make are never wrong because good and bad are simply illusions of the mind. The decisions that I make will clear the clutter, illuminate my path, expand my wisdom, and strengthen my sense of self. My intuition is always here with me. Let me get quiet so I can hear it. I'm always protected by a higher power. Some people think just saying a few words isn't going to change anything. And you're right, it's not going to be like this immediate thing that happens overnight. But if you think about it, you've been saying, negative things or having negative thinking processes for a very long time. So it is going to take a bit of adjustment to replace a lot of that stuff. So just imagine and dream for a moment, what would the opposite be like if you started saying the opposite of what your mind is trying to steer you in? Just what if? I always encourage my clients to get curious, try, practice, rinse, and repeat. I'm going to leave you with a quote by Albert Einstein. He says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." So remember the gift. All right, that's all that I have for you guys. I hope this video was super helpful. Be sure to subscribe, get the notifications, and share this video with someone that you love, someone that you think might need to hear this message today. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. I send monthly updates and things to help you continue to live a life with meaning, purpose, joy. Clear the clutter, unblock the emotions that are stirring inside of you, and get clarity. So I will see you next time, and thanks for tuning in.